Welcome to the Trellix Spotlight series. My name is Nick, and I will be your host. Today's session will focus on how to use the EDR activity feed to ingest data into ESM and SIEM. This webinar will be recorded. If you prefer not to participate in the recorded session, please feel free to disconnect at this time. A link to today's recorded presentation will be emailed to all registered attendees. This webinar is a brief overview covering common use cases and scenarios regarding this topic. It is not intended to be all-encompassing. If assistance is needed, please contact Trellix Technical Support. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them in the Q&A window. This webinar may run longer or shorter based on your participation, and we recommend asking as many questions as you can to make the most of this series. If the Q&A window is not displayed, click the tab at the bottom of your session window and click on the Q&A icon. We will answer the questions during the final section of this webinar. If you experience any audio issues during the webcast, please drop and attempt to reconnect. Our presenter today is Patrick Dura Biswas. Patrick began working at Trellix in November of 2011. He is currently working as a principal customer success engineer. Patrick deals mainly with EDR and endpoint security products. In his off time, he likes to spend time with his percussion instruments and traveling. Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick
Thank you, Nick, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing good. Today, we are going to talk about how we can ingest endpoint detection and response, that is our EDR threat events into any SIEM. Let's go through today's agenda quickly. First, we will talk about why customers uses this functionality and a small architectural details. Then we will go through the prerequisites. Here, I'll give demo on a step-by-step how to set up activity feed. We will talk about difference between the threat event, business events, and case management events. Followed by that, we will go through the integration steps of activity feed and Trellix SIEM. After that, we will see how we can use Docker to make this integration process seamless. At the end, we will talk about how to read the activity feed output and go through some very detailed of the rank, score, and the severity. By definition, an activity feed is a real-time list of actions performed by a user or an app or website. In this case, that will be the Kafka bus. EDR activity feed API is designed to consume EDR events like threat events, business events, and case management events. We'll talk about these event types in detail later part. Users can register their request with interested event type and with the sync details where they want the data to be pushed. Some of the data syncs are like S3 bucket, syslog, or webhook. Once these data sent to ESM or SIEM, the same can be used by an analyst to create correlation rules or perform further investigation on that threat. All right, let's go through what are the prerequisites we have to use this activity feed. First step will be to download the activity feed from this particular page. No worries, we'll share these details with you after the session. Even you can do simple web search as Trellix activity feed, and you should get the link of this page. This activity feed has been created using Python scripting, and you will need Python to be installed on the box. It can be Linux OS or can be Windows OS. Today, I'll first show you how we can use this activity feed in Windows box. Later during the session, I will show you how to use this activity feed with Docker in Linux box. If you do not have a Docker, then no need to worry. The steps one need to follow in Linux box is similar to what I will be performing in this Windows OS. There is really not much of Linux command line knowledge one need to use to perform any action using this activity feed on a Linux OS. All right. So I'm first and foremost, I'm not showing you how to install the Python here. I'm considering everyone here has Python installed on the box. Now, one prerequisite before we install activity feed is to have certain Python modules, like take an example, setup tools to be installed. Usually with the latest version of the Python, I didn't need to install this specifically as it was available by default. Okay, now as you can see here on the screen that if I go ahead and search for Python space dash dash version, it gives me Python version, which means I have the Python installed. Now, the next step will be to download the activity feed just by going to code and click on download zip. Once it is downloaded, you can navigate over there and extract this package. Now, once it is extracted, we'll get inside this folder. And we will type the command if you see at the end, I will see that Envision EDR activity feed is successfully installed. The command that I used to install this activity feed is Python setup Python space setup py space installed. This setup py file exists inside this particular folder. All right. Now, this is where our activity feed installation completes. It's very easy and very straightforward. All you need to make sure is that you have the Python application installed on the particular box. All right. Now, before we proceed further, what we need is to acquire the token ID so that we can generate the client ID and client secret using which activity feed will be able to authenticate and download this thread for the specific tenant. Now, understand this part that once you log into your EDR UI, let me give you a demo here. I will be using specific tenant and password. All right. So what we are exactly trying to fetch? We are trying to fetch any thread that will be showing up over here in the monitoring UI. Now let's spend a little bit time understanding here. Now, once we talk about threat, we are specifically talking about threat information shown up in this left side of the monitoring UI. If you look at, we can click on a specific thread, and there can be multiple detection coming up for the specific thread. Like for one machine, I can have multiple detections. This right side window is specifically called as detection details. Now, if we look, once we are using activity feed, this is something that we have to keep in mind, that activity feed pulls just the threat informations. That means it will pull only the new threats that is coming up on to your monitoring UI. If the same thread been sent from different machines from the environment without having any change on the severity part. So like take an example, I have right now this particular thread initially came as low risk on 5th of April. On 10th of April also it came as low risk. Now, we will only be sending the thread once, that is, once it was generated for the first time, that is on 5th of April. 10th of April, it would have been sent again to activity feed if the severity would have changed from low risk to medium or to high. This is very important to understand. Only when a severity has been changed for a specific detection under a threat, then only that new detection information will be parsed to activity feed. If there is no kind of change in detection, those new detection information will not be parsed to the activity feed. Now, here we are going to download any new threads that is coming up for this under this monitoring UI. Now, before we go ahead and do that, we need to understand one thing here, that we are talking about downloading and threat information specific to your tenant, right? Now, how exactly an activity feed or the Python script will know that which tenant that we have to reach out to, right? Now, for that only, what we will do, we will use something called as token ID. And using the token ID will be generated based on your email ID and the credentials. And the token ID is unique. So once you generate a client secret and a client ID, those also be unique. Let's see how to do that. We will go to Envision EPO console. We will log in to the Envision EPO console. Let's wait for to log in. Once this is logged in, you go to the menu and click on Appliance and Server. Click on Add. Select what kind of client type that we are looking for. We will select Trellix Endpoint Detection and Response. For me, it is just a one client. And here the client means it's not the number of EDR clients. It's specifically we are talking about here the like take an example, how many SIEM or how many SIEM boxes you have and stuff like that. So it is not to really mean that how many number of nodes of which has the EDR installed. No, that's not what it means. I'll just select one here. I'll click on Save, and you will see a token has been generated here, right? Now you can see that a token is showing a specific validity time, right? Within that time, we have to use this token. Now, I'll get into how to use this token to generate the client ID and client secret. But before going into that, let me clarify some point where we have seen various customers came to us asking, my environment, I don't use Envision EPO. I only use on-prem EPO. Does it mean that I cannot use a activity feed? No, that's not the case here. Once you have given an EDR login credentials, you can log in to the Envision EPO console. It doesn't mean that your machines needs to be managed by the Envision EPO. Your client machines are getting managed by your on-prem EPO server only. Only thing that you are doing, you are logging into your Envision EPO console with that particular credential and just to generate this token ID. All right. Now, once you have this particular token information, if you look at our activity feed step-by-step guide, here also have provided the screenshot. We will go ahead and run this specific command that we have mentioned. We are already inside the Envision EDR activity feed. What we will do, we'll type Python space, I'll type Envision EDR and just press 2 times tab. It will automatically select Envision EDR creates underscore generator.py. Then after that, I'll give a dash T, space, then dash T. I'll give another space and just just correct it. Sorry. Type the correct one and hit enter. And you can see there is a client ID and client secret been generated. Now understand this, the token gets expired. The token does have an expiry date, but the moment you have generated this client ID and client secret, this doesn't really have any kind of expiry date as such. All right. Now, once this has been generated, what we need to do, we'll go ahead and use it to download new threat information. What we'll do, we'll open a notepad. I'll copy this and I will use my client ID and client secret. So my client ID will be this. And secret. We will just copy this. Sorry, my bad. I'll go here. I'll type again Python and I'll just paste at complete information. Now let's see what are the things that we have here. First thing that we have is we have mentioned that mvision-edr-activity feed and then dash URL. What is the URL? The URL will be where is your tenant hosted. This part is very important. If your tenant is hosted in US East or US West, depending on that, this API URL will change. We can do a quick search mentioning Trellix EDR URL, and you will get the details of which are the URL that we are talking about. We are talking about specific to this API URLs. All right. Now, for me, this tenant is hosted in US West. So I have selected US West data center. Understand, we are not selecting till produce here. We are just selecting till trellix.com. That is just the HTTPS and the URL. So I'll just need to correct my information here. I'll go back and change this to is type Python space and just hit enter. And you will see that this specific activity feed is now started to run, and it is waiting for any new threads to show up. Now, if I want to export this entire command or the entire output to a specific file, we can do that. What we will do, go to downloads, envision the activity feed, and create a file output.txt. Okay. And if you go to this folder, you see the specific file output.txt. Now, once right now, it will just be storing the debug information. However, the moment there is any new threats that comes up, those information also will be showing up over here. Now, this is a way where I'm executing this activity feed manually to download the information and put it into a file. But in a real-time environment, this usually be used in a different way, where you would need to pass this information directly into a SIEM or to a syslog server. If you have any syslog server installed, you can create certain rules to pass these output informations into a syslog server automatically. Okay, in our case, we will go ahead and see how to do that using Docker during our next example. All right. So further to this topic, let's understand a little bit of a difference between the threat events, business events, and the case management events that we have been talking about. So let me start with the business events. Basically, business events aren't something that usually you'll be seeing anywhere in the EDR console. These are like, take an example, the login notifications is a login notification, and the other backend informations, those doesn't get populated into this EDR UI at any circumstances. So it is not really something that helps you in doing a threat investigation as such. The main two topics that helps you investigating any threat basically will be the threat event and the case management event. Let's look at what exactly a case management event is. So if you see, I already have this particular activity feed that is in a running state right now. I can go ahead and create an investigation. Give it a name as Spotlight, and I'll create it. I'll go to the investigation, and you'll see that the investigation has started to populate. Now, if you go back to your activity feed, you will see that this information, that particular investigation that we created, those information started to pull up over here. Now, if you want, you can pass these information to your syslog or to your SIEM. Now, the moment there is within the investigation, this any of the artifact starts getting added, those information will be keep on adding into this case management event. All right. Now, after this case management event, let's look at a little bit on the threat event. The threat event is pretty much clear, as we have mentioned. Threat events is uh, nothing but the threats that you are seeing under the monitoring UI and specifically within this threat list, right? So what we are going to do right now is we are going to generate a specific threat and we'll see how does it look like. Okay, so for the time being, I will cancel this case management event just so that it doesn't populate this information, and I will go ahead and execute. Right, we will go ahead and execute some samples here. Let's see, and we'll go back and start the activity feed back. No worries on the specifics that we are looking at over here. The reason behind this case management events will keep on populating at the moment there is any new artifacts is getting added over there. So our main intention is right now is to see the threat that we are going to see right now into the monitoring UI, which will get added. And once it gets added, we should be able to see the specific threat within that activity feed as well. All right, as we can see here that a new threat has been populated. So let's go back and let's check our UI, and you can see those two new threats has been populated here as well in the monitoring UI. And you will find the exact same informations showing up here, right? Like persistent samples.exe, you will find that the tribe and all other details that's showing up for that specific threat on the monitoring UI. All right. Now, this is the threat events that we are talking about, and the most important event for which we see that the any of the any of the analysts is actually using this activity feed to pass the data from the EDR UI to their ESM. Once they get these informations, the SHA-256 and other information, they can then start creating those correlations rules and debug this particular sample further. Let's look at some of these threats information that we are finding as an outcome of uh, the activity feed. Now, if we take an example of this persistent sample.exe that you're seeing over here, you can find all the techniques that's been used, right? Now, if we copy this output to a notepad plus plus, and basically it shows up over here like this. You have the thread ID information, you have the tenant ID information, the thread information shows up here. Now, if you look at the thread information, the most interesting part to any analyst will be this section where you can actually find out what are the different techniques that's been used over here, and then the sample name, the SHA. This will be helping a lot to do any further investigation of well, this data been passed to the SIEM. And then while creating those rules, it will be easier for an analyst to understand if how much impactful this specific threat is. Now, we'll move to the topic of Docker and integrating activity feed with Docker. So, so far, what we have seen is manually downloading the log or and then passing it to syslog. Now, next, what we are going to do, we are going to create a Docker image with activity feed command line running into it and automatically parsing the events directly to your syslog IP or to your ESM IP in that matter. Now, in this demo, I'll be taking an example of parsing this in this Docker, whatever the Docker is collecting directly to ESM, that is to our Trellix ESM. Now, before we pass it to a Trellix ESM, we need to make sure that we have the proper receivers created in the ESM side. So for that, what we'll do, I'm giving this example here only for Trellix ESM. We have given this rule in our activity feed itself. If you have a different ESM box, you can follow the steps that we have mentioned over here and understand how exactly we are correlating the data over here from the activity feed output, and you can create the similar kind of rule for your SIEM as well. Now, I have this particular XML file already downloaded. Now, what we are going to do, we are going to go to the policy editor, click on File, Import, and click on Rules. Now, you can click on Import Rules and select that XML file and import it. In my case, I already have it imported. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just search by that particular signature ID here in SIEM. As you can see, it is showing emission EDR hit detected, right? So once you have imported it, you will be finding the similar information. Okay, once you have created it, let's go ahead and create the data source. So for that, what we will do, we'll click on the receiver. We'll go to properties and wait for a while. We'll go to data sources. Now here you need to click on add. Select the data source as generic. The source model should be advanced syslog parser. Here you have to select the IP address from where you are gonna gather this log. For me, if you look at it, I am passing this information. I'll just click on edit on the existing one because I already have the data source created here. So you can see I have mentioned my Ubuntu box where I'm running that syslog, the Docker image. That particular box informations or the IP address I have put over here. All right. And by default, the port over here will be 514. Once done, you need to save it and this right button will be highlighted. Please click on that. Okay. This is how we go ahead and create the receiver in the Trellix ESM side to take the data from the activity feed. Now, let's set up the Docker for this activity feed to automate this whole process. So I have taken an Ubuntu box here as an example. And what I did is following this particular Ubuntu article on how to install Docker engine on Ubuntu. I'll be sharing this in the presentation as well. And I have installed the Docker on this particular Ubuntu box following it. Okay. Now, first and foremost thing that you have to verify is if Docker is running or not. If you type the command docker space images, you would see in the usually it will just be showing you this hello world. It is showing multiple over here because I have created those. But in your end, if you're using the Docker for the first time, you just see it once. Now, once you see this, copy the activity feed from this page, that is what we have downloaded, this zip file, and move it to this Ubuntu box. I have already copied it. So I'll go to cd temp and help. Sorry, my bad. cd slash home Ubuntu temp, and yeah, I have the activity feed copied over here, as you can see. Now, what we are gonna do is create a Docker image with the ESM IP address. So in this case, I have taken the ESM IP address as 10.12.22.101, which is my ESM box. and I'll show you how to create this. Okay. So what we are gonna do, we are gonna first get inside cd envision EDR activity feed master, this particular folder. And I'm going to run this specific command. Show you that. So I'm going to run this command. I'll change just the ESM IP address here. IP address, copy it, and I'll change the name to that I can understand it better. So what's the command that I typed? It is docker space build space dash dash rm space dash dash build dash argument arg space ESM underscore IP equal to the ESM IP that you have, space dash T space envision EDR activity feed, and then the name that you want to give. So if I go ahead and paste it here, and once I run this command, you can see that the image getting created. Now I'll run the command again, and you'd see that this envision EDR activity feed spotlight has been created just 10 seconds ago, right? Now, after this, what we will do, we already had created that specific secret ID and secret token. So we don't need to create it again. But if you're doing it for the first time, then definitely you would need to go ahead and create it. Now, the Docker image has been created. However, what we need to do is run this Docker image with the command so that the information gets parsed to this image. Now, what I'm gonna do is we will run this specific command, that's docker run envision EDR activity feed, and I'll change it to spotlight. And here, what we have to do, we have to change this URL to US burst. If you recall the previous discussion that we had on this, where I mentioned that you would need to make sure that you are using the same URL to which same API URL to which your tenant belong to. Now, in this case, it will be UI.soc, and I will change this client ID and the client secret, which I have created for the test purpose. Right, and we'll copy it, go back to our Ubuntu box, and paste it. Enter. As you can see, it has started to run it. Now, the best part of this is this has started to run, right? So if you want, you can just disconnect this specific one. What I can do, I can open a new station to the same Ubuntu box. So let's see, change the front a little bit. It's easier for everyone to understand. I hope it is better visible now. Okay. Now, if till here, what we have done is we have run the specific command with that Docker image. Now, I'll go back and use a command called as docker ps. It will show you right now which one is actually running. This is the container ID which we are more interested in right now. It means within this container, we have this activity feed running with the command line that we have passed. Okay. Okay. So once we have the Docker ID, basically specific ID or container ID under which we are running this, what we are going to do, we are going to go ahead and run this specific command, that is, copy this. The command will be docker ex space exec space dash it, the container ID, and bash. Okay, let me copy this. Now we are actually inside that container. You can see the difference over here right now, right? Now, if I go ahead and look at cat etc rsyslog t file, you would see that it clearly shows the IP and the port that has been used by us, right? That means under this, we have the information of what exactly, where exactly these events are getting right now. That is the ESM configuration, right? Is another file. This file, you do not need to do anything as such. It doesn't really need any configuration change. These are mostly the configuration information that you have. We don't suggest anyone to touch any of this configuration at this point. Now, the interesting part to see over here is that under this container, we are already running an RSys log by default, which means the logs will keep on be gathered from this activity feed to this specific container, and container will keep on parsing this information back to the ESM box. Now, most important part of this whole exercise is this. It's not only parse the events automatically. This Docker file that we have given, if I do an I'll go to /home Ubuntu. Oops, like that. Give me a second. Okay, if I go to home/Ubuntu and I go to CD 10 to 10 emission feed, and I'll get L minus S. And you see the file, that is a Docker file using which this image has been created. The best part of this whole process is if you just need, so most of the cases what customer just needs is that they need the threat information only and not all the case management events or the business events. So on that case, if you are running this Docker image, this will only parse the threat detection summary, that is only the threat events to the ESM box. All right. Now, this is how we actually go ahead and send the threats events using the activity feed automatically. That's the automation process using the Docker to our ESM. Okay. Now, let's understand a little more in detail of how we can match this activity feed output with the output that we are getting in our EDR UI console. Now, if you look at here, you'd see that the activity feed is showing something called as rank, score, and severity, right? Now, what exactly are rank, score, and severity over here? Now, first and foremost thing, the rank is the severity, that is, if it is S2 or S1, into 50 plus whatever the score that this particular threat is getting. That's how rank is calculated. Now, if you actually want to map this output with your monitoring UI output, right, then all you need to look at is the rank. If you have a rank that is below 100, then the rank that will be a low severity. Low means that threat will be coming under low category in monitoring UI. If a rank is between 100 to 199, then that will be considered as a medium severity signature. That's what you are seeing over here for this specific persistent sample.exe that we had executed, right? If you look at this high severity threats, that has to be the rank has to be greater than or equal to 200. In this case, if you look at the test5.exe, the rank of that is 270. Okay, so that's how we go ahead and map this activity feed output with the monitoring UI output. Now, we have got questions from a couple of environments where they were not able to understand if how to read this activity feed logging output and map it with the monitoring UI because the severity is not something that's by default been shown over here in the monitoring UI like S1, S2, S3, or S4. What we have shown over here is high, medium, and low. So once you actually try to map it with your monitoring UI and the activity feed output, that point of time, you look at the rank and understand how if it is actually a high severity threats as per the monitoring UI, or if it's a medium severity threat as per the monitoring UI, or if it's a low severity threat as per the monitoring. All right. Okay. So this is the part of how to understand the activity feed output and map it with monitoring UI. Okay, we are towards the end of today's session. So just to let all of you know, I hope all of you have seen this specific Trellix developer portal where we have given many APIs. That is, we call this as the Envision API. So in future, this threads that we are downloading from the monitoring UI or from the EDR backend using the activity feed, we are trying to give that leverage of using the Envision API gateway, which will be having much more functionalities, like we are trying to integrate not only the threat list, but the detection list as well to be added into that Envision API gateway. What it means that in future you might be able to go ahead and download individual detections as well, even if there is no change in the severity, if that is actually a requirement from your business point of view. Now, currently, the activity feed that we have works based on the OpenDXL streaming, as you all know. So, and in future, we will be trying to move this entire API integration to our Envision API gateway for better functionalities and feasibilities. With that, thanks to everyone who have joined the session, and thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please ask it now, and I'll try to answer it. Thanks everyone again.
Thanks, Patrick Shar. As a reminder for everyone, Trellix Education Services offers exceptional training to go along with our award-winning products. If you would like to learn more, please visit the website listed on your screen to see all of our offerings. Now let's get our Q&A session started. I see we have several questions, but it's not too late to add your question. Please type it in the Q&A window to submit. Additionally, take a moment to fill out the survey. Your feedback and suggestions are always appreciated. Do we need to run the activity feed and Docker both together?
Not really. So activity feed, if you're running as an just one, the initial one that I shown in my demo, just that activity feed, you don't need to run the Docker. If you are running the Docker, then you don't need the activity feed. So basically, what you are doing, the activity feed that that I shown in the initial run, it was run like we ran it, we can close it, and it will not run again. But once you're running it under Docker, it's made it automated, so that you don't need to do anything manually at that point of time. The Docker machine can run in the backend, and the Docker machine has the script running within itself under the RSys log.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one. Can we run the activity feed on Mac OS?
Not something we have tested. Basically, this activity feed is supposed to run all the time to fetch the information from the backend. Like anytime a new thread is coming into the monitoring UI, those should be going to that activity feed. So unless the Mac OS is running all the time, you cannot really run that particular script continuously, right? So it has to be just any box that has Python installed or Docker installed, any one of them, and running the activity feed as a script or under the Docker, and keep on pulling this information.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one as well. Does activity feed pull previous day's threat events?
Oh, not really. So activity feed will only be starting to pull the information when you actually start it and any next events. So like if I start it right now, and from there, any new threats that is coming up, those only be showing up, not the previous day's events, no.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one as well. Can we ingest activity feed events to a syslog server, which is further sending data to a third-party SIEM?
Oh yeah, that's what we have been showing over here, right? And that's what we have mentioned in our this activity feed document as well, how to send those to any RSys log.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one. It looks like that's all the time that we've got for today's session. There are a few more questions that are a bit more specific. What we'll do is we'll collect those questions and work to follow up with you after the webinar. I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar, and a big thank you to our speaker, Patrick Shar. As a reminder, a link to today's recorded presentation will be emailed to all registered attendees. This concludes today's webinar. Stay safe, everyone.